speaking, on two sides of the room, opposite sides, in more ways than one. Buckhorn's gaze lingered on a man sitting at a baize-covered table playing poker with several other men. He had his back to a corner, sitting close enough to the wall that no one could get behind him without him knowing it. Less than a decade earlier, up in Deadwood, Wild Bill Hickok had learned the hard way the folly of sitting with his back to the door. It looked like this hombre was in the habit of not repeating Hickok's mistake. He was barrel-chested, wearing a black vest over a gray shirt. A black hat was thumbed back on curly brown hair. A neatly trimmed mustache adorned his upper lip. He held his cards in his left hand and used his right to toss chips into the pot when the bet came around to him. When he wasn't doing that, the right hand was out of sight, probably resting on his thigh near his gun, so it would be handy for a fast draw if he needed to make one. Buckhorn's eyes were drawn to a woman behind the bar. A number of gaudily dressed saloon girls moved among the Irish Rose's patrons, reasonably attractive women with painted faces, wearing dresses that were provocatively low in the neckline and high in the hem. The redhead behind the bar put them all to shame, though. Her mass of auburn curls framed a breathtakingly lovely face, and even though she was more modestly dressed than the others, something about her made a man's breath speed up a little, and his belly tighten with instinctive need. She was the sort of woman few men could lay eyes on without wanting. A wagon pulled by a couple of mules rattled along the street and came to a stop in front of the saloon. Half a dozen men jumped down eagerly from the back of it. Buckhorn glanced over at them as they tromped up onto the boardwalk. Their grimy faces and hands and rough, sweat-stained clothes told him they had just come from the mines. Their boisterous voices indicated that they were ready to blow off some steam, despite the weariness they must feel from their day's labor. They wanted to carouse for a while, before going back to wherever they were staying to fall into an exhausted sleep for a few hours, before the bleak cycle began all over again. One of the miners paused and stopped the others by saying, "Hey, boys, look at that." He pointed a blunt, filthy finger at Buckhorn. The other men laughed. One of them said, "Hey, fella, shouldn't you be standing in front of a barber shop?" Evidently, that was the most hilarious thing the others had ever heard. They whooped with laughter and pounded each other on the back. The one who had spoken first came closer to Buckhorn and asked, "Are you a full-blood redskin, mister? Or just one of them dirty breeds?" The way Buckhorn was standing, they couldn't see his gun. He turned so it was visible. The big grins disappeared as they saw the weapon. "Damn, Sid," a man muttered. "He must be one of them hired guns working for Conroy or Thornton." A lot of men around here carried guns, but all it took was a glance at Buckhorn to tell that he wore his differently. It was the tool of his trade, the most obvious one anyway, the others being a keen eye, sharp reflexes, and cool nerves. The miner called Sid looked doubtful for a second. Then he produced a forced laugh. Buckhorn knew the sound. Sid wasn't going to let himself be backed down. He swaggered closer and said with a sneer, "I never heard of no Indian gunslinger." Buckhorn slid his left hand into his pocket and brought out a silver dollar. He said, "I'm not looking for trouble. Have a drink on me, friend." With his thumb, he flipped the silver dollar toward Sid. The man's eyes followed the coin, and his hand came up automatically to reach for it. A quick step brought Buckhorn within reach. His left fist came up and smashed into Sid's jaw. The man slewed sideways, tripped over his own feet, and fell onto the boardwalk. The coin he had failed to catch bounced a couple of times on the planks next to him before coming to rest. A collective growl came from the throats of the other miners. Buckhorn stepped back and rested his right hand on the Colt, which caused them to stop as they began to surge toward him. "I meant what I said."